Hello, everyone, and welcome to Just One Thing for Health. My name is Velyn Hawkins, and I am the program manager, project manager for the program. And I'm excited to be here this evening because we're going to touch on some things that I don't think that have really gotten to be part of the conversation until now. And our guest today is Dr. Stephen Kaufman, who I'm going to let him tell you about himself. But I thought it was really interesting to be in this conversation about mindfulness and respect and compassion. And I know I was having a conversation with someone earlier today, and I was mentioning this, and you typically think about that from the standpoint of being in this space and others being mindful, respectful, and compassionate of you because you're going through this process. However, we're approaching this, and thank you, Dr. Kaufman, from the standpoint of us as the change makers, being compassionate and respectful and mindful of others as we're on this journey into a new lifestyle and a new habits for eating. And so I'm going to, without further ado, welcome our guest, Dr. Stephen Kaufman. Good evening, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Lynn. Glad to be here.
So, Dr. Kaufman, tell us, how did you get on this journey of, whole food, plant-based, and to put it simply, an eye doctor? I know what you do is a lot more intense than that and expansive than that, but tell us.
Well, professionally, I'm an ophthalmologist, and I specialize in retinal diseases. So I treat things like diabetic eye disease and macular degeneration, two conditions that are affected by diet, by the way, as well as other conditions that affect the retina in various ways. And a passion of mine has been animal advocacy and healthy and earth-friendly and people-friendly living. I mean, it's basically for everybody. Just about anything that people value, a plant-based diet is going to be beneficial towards that end. There's very few things that you'd say, gee, eating animals and animal products is sort of promoting something that people value other than perhaps a taste preference. Everybody's got a story, and I'm not saying that mine is necessarily much more interesting than anybody else's, but only that, sort of kind of come to a realization of things that are kind of obviously true, and most people are kind of aware of it. It's just a question of whether or not they're ready to accept that and act accordingly. Most people know that this kind of eating is healthy for them. It's good for them. It's not gonna make anybody immortal, but you want to stay healthy until the time comes that your body says, I've had enough. You don't want to start losing limbs in your 40s and 50s and suffer your first heart attack at age 45 and things like that. So there's no guarantee you won't get hit by a bus, but you want to stay vigorous and healthy. It's going to make your life better, and that's that's the personal perspective. And then the other issues having to do with world hunger, with the environment, and of course animal protectionism, those all favor the plant-based diet, particularly the animal issues, which is just so it's just an outrage that what we're doing to those poor creatures so unnecessarily, and it's really a crime of immense proportions. So and then the video, of course, was not dealing so much with those reasons to adopt the whole foods plant-based diet as much as because I know a lot of people are talking about that, and I think that's really great, but rather that in the world in which we live, there's stumbling blocks for us and for other people as we sort of interact with them, and so it's a matter of how can we navigate these waters. I don't have all the answers, of course. I just offer some thoughts based on experience and what I've learned over the years, and hopefully people will find what I have to say helpful in their own particular journey, and also in terms of dealing with the issues that come up. Everybody's got unique stories and unique challenges. But I think one thing that can be a helpful thing to remember, and I talk about this in the video, of course, is that, kind of we're all struggling in various ways to find direction and meaning and joy in our lives. And, we've chosen a certain path, and I think it's a very good one for a lot of reasons. But other people have chosen a different path. And then it's just a question of, where can we meet and have conversations that are mutually beneficial and respectful. I mean, if we're proselytizing, I'm right, and now I'm going to try to show you why you're wrong, that isn't always terribly well received. But if you come to a conversation, you've got perspectives, I can learn from them. I may or may not change you, you may or may not change me, but let's have conversations, hear where we're coming from, and share our information, and see if we can't all be better for having this particular interaction, wherever it leads. And not to have the final goal, as it were, to make somebody become a vegan, but rather, can I impart some of my experience and knowledge in ways that will broaden their horizons and be open to what they have to say. You may or may not agree with it, but at least be open to hear them, where the concerns are and what matters to them and why.
I think those are excellent points. And it makes me think that, what do you typically see? Do you typically see more coming from the perspective of change? Do you see that it's easier for women to change into this new series of habits, or men, or which one is typically more difficult?
Yeah. It's so, it's so variable. And, if you just look at somebody, you will not be able to tell, just by looking at them, the way they dress, their gender, their demeanor, where they're going to, how they're going to respond to us. So, your tattooed biker, you may well be a vegan. And, someone who's, a hippie, liberal, very progressive, concerned about environment and all the rest, they're not going to give up their burgers. So you never know. And so, I mean, everyone, I think because the diet speaks to the needs and desires of just about everybody. So then it's just a question of who's open to what we have to say and willing to listen. And, again, I'm talking about conversations, but a lot of people don't even want to have that conversation. So that when I say to listen, it's not to say who's going to be a student of mine, but rather who's going to be someone willing to have a conversation with me. And that's variable. And so you can't really tell just by, anybody who's done leafleting, you might anticipate that someone's more or less likely to take the leaflet, but in my experience, I'm right about 70 to 80% of the time. So I miss a lot in terms of the expectations, just by looking at them, their demeanor and the way they look. You can't tell. You can't tell. So, obviously statistically, we know that there's more women than men who are vegan. We know that people who are above average income are more likely than people below average income, things like that. But those are just general statistical things. And when it comes to the individual, there's nothing that even closely resembles a set rule there.
Interesting. So what do you think is the number one reason why some people just won't change?
I think that they're afraid that it's going to make their lives much worse in many ways. I think that they are afraid that they're going to give up foods that they really like, and that's going to be a major sacrifice. Along those lines, I'd add that a lot of people feel pretty stressed out by life. If it's not their work, it's their relationships, it's money, it's something. And so, for many people, their meals are the highlight of their day. And if you're going to tell them now you're going to be forced to eat foods that you really don't care that much for and give up the foods that you love, that's a big sacrifice for many people. And so, or at least is perceived as a big sacrifice. And so it's scary to even entertain that. And I think many people are concerned that it's going to alienate them from family and friends because of eating together, social component of eating is a big thing. And for many people, joining in food, is part of what it means to belong to a group or family. And so if they feel that they're going to be alienated from those groups, well, that's scary. It doesn't have to be that way, but sometimes it can be a problem, and you can have a situation where the family members really find it difficult to deal with someone in their house who's adopted a whole food plant-based diet. And in addition, of course, if we come to it from an ethical standpoint, then what we're really saying to the world is, I don't refrain from eating certain foods because I don't like them, but rather because I find it unethical to consume them. And that's an implicit moral challenge. And so that makes a lot of people uncomfortable as well. So these are all considerations and concerns, not that they couldn't be overcome, but they're challenges. And that's one of the reasons why we're a minority, and which is unfortunate, but and so, as the hope is that someday we'll get to that tipping point where it just sort of becomes so much the norm that people kind of look at you funny if you eat animals. That time might not come before in vitro meat is available, but I don't think that we can just sit around and wait for in vitro meat to become available. If it does, then we may find a solution to factory farming at least. It won't necessarily be a healthier option, although it could be. It could be, because in vitro could be manufactured in ways that are not so, are not bad for you. You shouldn't eat just that stuff, of course, because you get no fiber and things like that. But there may come a time when at least the vegan aspect of things is just not a big deal anymore. But right now it can be a bit of a challenge.
I can definitely see that. And I think we've got a couple of comments here that are supporting that as well. And Maya, the other half of Dr. Riz, is in our audience, and she asks, well, she's actually stating she's really liking your approach here. It is about showing compassion and respect towards our fellow humans. Why do some meat eaters have a problem viewing footage of animals being killed for food?
Well, it is upsetting. I mean, it's kind of gross. I mean, if you don't like blood and guts, that's what it is. And it's upsetting to see individuals suffering. And it is kind of disconcerting to see human beings without evident passion sort of callously causing such extreme violence on innocent individuals. But the most upsetting thing for many people, I strongly suspect, is that it forces them into a moral dilemma, because they know that this is where their food's coming from. And so then if they see this, then they have to say, well, do I really want to be a part of this? So that they rather not watch it all together and prefer the mythical old McDonald's farm where animals are prancing about and leading a benign existence. So, I understand the resistance to it psychologically, but obviously, the point would obviously be, if you're vegan, then obviously there's no reason why you should watch this, because it's just upsetting. But if you're not, then you should know where your food's coming from, that this is the reality.
Yes, it is. Thank you. Thank you for that question, Maya. So a point of curiosity here. Is your family in support of this? Is your family all on board with this lifestyle?
More or less. More or less. It's variable. So, and I think that's true for all of us, that the family, the family's so supportive of me, but more or less. And, and you can't make your love conditional upon what people eat. So at least when it comes to family, I mean, when you choose your friends, but you don't choose your family. And so and family is important for a lot of reasons. So,
yes, it is. Yes, it is.
That's the way it goes.
Well, so question for you. From your perspective, what is one of the best books or documentaries to help people starting out on this journey?
There's a lot of good ones out there, and it's hard, and I haven't really studied them closely to say, yeah, this is the best one. I know that there's a lot of vegan starter kits of various kinds, and just about all of the advocacy groups, it seems, have their own kit. And I'm not sure which ones are the best. I know that Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine has some really good stuff. And I think it's Nutrition Facts. It's got a lot of good material. That's Michael Greger, right? Isn't that what he does?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of really good videos on a wide range of topics. And his book, what's his book? Anyhow, I'm blocking on it. But and then there's a lot of videos out there too. A lot of it is not rocket science. It's the foods that the kind of foods that our bodies are made to eat are the foods that we should be eating. And so the only thing I would add or say is that there's good reason to think that a pure plant-based diet, a lot of people are not going to get enough vitamin B12. In part because you get some B12 from dirt. And if you eat root vegetables, you're going to get a fair amount of dirt if you don't clean them. So our ancestors had access to the B12 from the dirt that was on root vegetables. And we generally clean that off. So I recommend people take a supplemental B12 if they're plant-based purely for health purposes. And in my opinion, I think that the evidence is that our ancient ancestors, when they got a hold of some flesh, they took advantage of that. They occasionally were able to kill small animals, occasionally kill bigger animals, but that was a tall task. Some of the anthropological evidence indicates that they were more scavengers than hunters initially. But in any event, they weren't whole food plant-based exclusively. And they would get some B12 that way, of course. So, we don't live this, in many ways, we don't live like our hominid ancestors. Our relatively sedentary lifestyles are, not the way they used to live either. So, and the kind of environments in which we live, so aseptic in many ways. So all of these are ways in which we differ from our ancestors. So you can't just say, oh, just live like our ancestors, because we really can't. But what we can do is recognize that our bodies are made for a certain diet, and we can have an analogous diet that comes pretty close. And obviously, the way people eat today is most people is profoundly different from that. And a lot of the diseases that we see today are diseases of affluence. At least in the West, we see that. The obesity, the diabetes, the high blood pressure. These are conditions that are striking people at an early age, and it's a consequence of lifestyle and particularly diet.
Absolutely.
Well, Dr. Kaufman, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Do you think that Peta may have created a little bit of a challenge for us in the vegan movement or plant-based movement by activism that could have gone a little bit too far?
That's a hard question, and because cause and effect is so hard to ascertain. They put animal rights on the map, and hats off to them for that. And the way they did that was by constantly pushing the envelope of what is going too far. and sometimes people would say, you've gone too far. I'd rather be naked than wear fur. Some people were really offended by that campaign. And other people said, gee, it's getting the fur issue in the public eye. So it's hard for me to really say, even to have a strong opinion about it. And if I did, it wouldn't matter, because PETA's going to do what PETA's going to do. So, it's not something I spend a lot of time thinking about whether I wish PETA had done this or not. One of the things that they've done quite well has gotten celebrities involved, and I think this has made a big difference. A lot of people are interested in what celebrities have to say. There are people in the animal rights movement who say we shouldn't be so celebrity-oriented. Again, you can argue these things back and forth, and at the end of the day, my opinion doesn't carry a whole lot of weight with what PETA does. So I just do my thing and be an activist and an advocate in the way that seems right for me. And hopefully I have a positive impact, and I don't worry too much about what other people are doing.
Great.
And just for the record, those who are curious and new coming into this scene, what is PETA?
Oh, I'm People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. It's a national organization, and they've been very important in getting animal rights into the public consciousness. And yeah, you've got to be pretty new to the scene to not know who PETA is.
Okay. New.
I think everybody, if you know anything about animal rights, you've heard of PETA.
Well, since your specialty is eye care, do
Yes.
you think that there are specific fruits or vegetables that may be really great for us to consume regularly to protect our eyes, or are they all good?
Yeah, I wouldn't say, oh, you got to eat a bunch of this. Basically, fruits and vegetables that have color have various of the carotenoids, and they're all good for you in different ways. And so I wouldn't say, oh, this is the one you've got to have. Now, when it comes to the eyes, there's only two carotenoids that are actually in the retina. That's lutein and zeaxanthin. But you need more than that for good general health. So I don't say stock up on just those two. A lot of people take a supplement for their eyes. I wouldn't necessarily do so. There's some people that I might recommend it, but for a lot of people, I would not. I would say a healthy diet is going to be your best bet for good, health and well-being, and good eye health. And then again, it's the whole diet, because you could eat all the kale and broccoli and all the rest of good foods and the squashes and all that great stuff, and yet if you're eating a lot of other junk and develop diabetes, for example, well, that can affect your eyes in many adverse ways, as well as the rest of your body, of course. So it's about just the holistic approach. In Michael Pollan's book, The Omnivore's Dilemma, he talks about nutritionism, where people would identify one nutrient that seemed to be good for health or bad for health, and adjust their diet accordingly. And I think the holistic approach makes much more sense.
Great.
Are there any books or videos on the topic that you'd recommend us to check out, especially those curious people?
Well, there's a lot of books out there. A lot of people, though, I would generally recommend websites and book lists as primers. And then if you want to go into great detail, that's all well and good. I think Neil Barnard has several really good books out there. But you can get a zillion recipes. I mean, it's just, the information is just so readily available on the internet, and just kind of go to, Mercy for Animals, Compassion Over Killing, Vegan Outreach, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. All these organizations have excellent websites with all the information people need. And again, one of the things that's nice is it's not rocket science. You don't have to be sophisticated. It's just eating smart, eating intelligently. Now, obviously, the potato chip vegan diet is not going to do you any good from a health standpoint, but your whole foods plant-based diet, you're not going to go too wrong. It's just a matter of just having a variety of foods in your diet. It's just not hard. I mean, it only becomes a little bit of a hassle, like when you're trying to eat out or eat in other people's homes and things like that, because their food may not accommodate that diet terribly well. But preparing food for yourself is really not difficult, and it's either from a culinary or from a shopping standpoint. It's really pretty straightforward. And the other thing is that a lot of people don't realize, and of course this just comes from experience, is just that once you start eating these foods, you come to really enjoy them. I mean, fresh vegetables are really good. If you're accustomed to slathering everything with butter or cheese, then at first they seem kind of bland because it's not covered with all these very tasty, salty materials. But when you start to actually enjoy the flavors of the food themselves and not the stuff that's dumped on them, you actually, I think, and can enjoy the food in a different way, and perhaps even a better way.
I agree. So, can eye diseases be reversed when people change their diets?
Well, diabetic eye disease sort of has a self-limited course. There was a study that showed that good sugar control improved the prognosis of people with diabetic eye disease. And that could, and diet is an important component of good sugar control. So from that perspective, the answer would be yes with diabetes. Macular degeneration, I don't know of any good evidence for that. Certainly a healthy diet is going to be better for you for macular degeneration in long term, but I think it's partly just a disease of getting older, particularly if you have some genetic susceptibility. And, you know, just there's a lot of things that happen to the body as you get older. And some people develop the macular degeneration. And so it's not something you can be cured with diet, just as diabetes might or might not be cured with diet. Though a lot of people do stop becoming insulin dependent when they adopt a diet that is whole food plant-based. I mean, that certainly can be a very helpful way to address that particular condition. So, you know, the whole food plant-based diet doesn't guarantee, you know, a life of happiness and longevity and good health, but it's going to improve your odds substantially. And in addition, then you don't have to make excuses to yourself about the sorts of decisions that you're making. For example, you know, you don't have to sort of say, well, I love animals, but, you know, I don't feel good about what I'm doing to these farmed animals. Or by the same token, I really care about the environment, but I don't want to give up my burgers. You know, you get this internal conflict. You don't get the internal conflict. Now, none of us leads a totally harmless life. I mean, everybody leaves a footprint on the earth, no matter what you do. And I drive in a car, and that puts squirrels at risk. And I certainly squish some insects on my windshield as I drive. So, I mean, you know, we live in an imperfect world, and we can't be totally harmless. But I think that if you are doing the best you can toward that end, I think that you can have a certain degree of peace of mind that comes from sort of feeling that you're doing your best. And I think that, you know, you don't have these internal conflicts about, you know, am I really doing the right thing here? It doesn't mean that conflicts don't go away, and there's always going to be challenges in terms of, you know, what's the right thing to do in a wide range of situations. But I guess if you sort of say that compassion, respect, those be your guides, you're not going to go too wrong. And when it comes to diet, I mean, that one's a no-brainer because it's not compassionate to sponsor cruelty in animals. I mean, that's a no-brainer. You know, do you support locally or do you support nationally or internationally? Those are difficult questions, and there's not a clear right or wrong. But do you support factory farming? Well, I mean, that you know, if you can't figure that one out, then it's kind of hopeless.
Oh, great information, and I liked a lot of that perspective. We have a question here. Do you think it would be good for kids to start off early in life knowing where their food comes from, specifically the animal products?
Yeah, I do. I don't think that these things should be hidden from children. They don't have to see terrible videos of animals being tortured. That could give them nightmares, and I'm not saying that should happen. But they should know. They should know. And especially, of course, you've got to also empower them with the ability to choose otherwise. You don't want to say, this is a terrible thing to do with animals, now eat your chicken. You know, obviously that's not going to help the kid. But if you're going to say, this is, you know, we eat this way and this is why, I think that's okay. I think that's fine. And, you know, and in fact, I think it's almost a universal experience that there's a time when children, probably around the age of 5 or 6, realize that chicken come from chickens and hamburgers come from cows. And they like these animals, and they realize that animals got killed in order for them to have that food, and they don't want it. It's very, very common for children to have a period. It may be brief, it may be one meal, because they may find eat your dinner or you don't get dessert, and that's the end of that. But there's going to be, almost every kid is going to have that time where they realize, I like animals and I really don't want to see them hurt. But most parents squash that before it has a chance to materialize in any sort of cohesive ethic.
Yeah, you're right. Like, I know I have a couple of friends who knew from an early age that their body didn't take well to animal products, chicken, beef, and they didn't want to eat them. And over time, they started, but as they grew older, they migrated back out of that. And coming into this space, they're like, now I know why.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with kids and fruits and vegetables. A lot of kids have been, even kids, conditioned to not eat fruits and vegetables. How do you make that, help them make that transition into that, adding that to their diet and it being good?
It's going to be really hard if the parents aren't on board, especially for younger children. So, and the other thing is that a lot of parents are worried that their kids aren't going to have all the nutrients they need to grow big and strong. So if the parents aren't on board and oftentimes are resistant and hostile to the whole idea, it's going to make it really hard for the kids. But if the parents are on board, then it's generally not a problem. And this is what we eat. This is just what our family eats, and the kids adjust to it. And especially if you start eating these foods early on, you don't develop these food preferences. Just people will generally like just about all foods, unless for some reason they make these mental associations and then they grow up disliking certain tastes, which at some level of consciousness has bad associations. And but otherwise, people are going to like just about all the foods that are out there, as long as it doesn't make them feel bad. That is to say, if it makes them feel sick, then again, their brain will make associations and say, I don't want to eat this kind of food. But otherwise, they'll eat it, just naturally.
And have you had any major success stories that you'd like to share with us about patients who have gone to this diet lifestyle and have had some shifts in, say, their eye health?
Not too much. I certainly encourage this diet to my patients, but as an eye doctor, it's hard for me to give them the medical support that they might want. I'm not their medical doctor. And I'm hesitant to, I certainly encourage them to work with their medical doctors, if they're going to make any major changes, because especially for people with diabetes, you don't want to throw everything off in terms of their management of the sugar. So I wouldn't say I've got any individual success stories that way. But I think that there's people hear me, and I think that it probably makes a difference for some of them. It seems to. But most of my quote success stories would be more in the, and I'm hesitant to even say this, call it a success story, because I don't force anybody to do anything. Anything that I've done of my own will, I might call that a success story. But if I've encouraged other people to adopt a certain diet and they've done so, well, that's their success story, really, more than mine. And so as an advocate, I've been more involved, with the Christian Vegetarian Association, and I think that we've made a difference with that ministry. We've helped a lot of people. But again, I wouldn't call it my success story. I'd say that I've been more of a facilitator, and they've been the ones who've been successful.
And Dr. Kaufman, tell us a little bit about your practice. Where are you located? Well,
I live in Cleveland, and I work in several offices around Northeast Ohio. I work part-time at this point, which is actually kind of a nice lifestyle, which gives me a little bit of time for the advocacy and time for family things, and sports and things like that. So, I mean, it's a pretty good way to live, actually, if you can make it work. But yeah, I enjoy my work, but it's nice not to have to work 5 days a week, for example.
Yes, I can totally relate to that too. So, how long have you been a vegan? Have you been one all your life?
Oh, no. It's really more since the 90s. And it sort of was kind of a gradual thing. And even, the thing is that it's impossible to be totally 100% vegan in your life. I mean, after all, my car has animal products in it. But in terms of avoiding it as best I can in the diet, that's since early 90s.
Okay. This is so cool. Was your wife vegan when you met?
No.
Has she converted?
She's not totally vegan. but she, but it's pretty close, and it's she has, it's a question of what makes her feel good and healthy, and I've got to respect that. Yeah, that, when you pass the vows, you don't say conditional upon any changes in my life, or whatever. You sort of say, you still have your own choices and your own life to lead, and I respect that.
Very good. So what is one of your favorite quotes in this space? I would imagine that you might have one or two.
I don't know what you mean.
Anyone like Dr. Bernard, Dr. Esselstyn, anyone said something that stuck with you that you find yourself repeating a quote of theirs?
I don't know. I sometimes relate a story that was important in my journey. There was an article that came out in the New York Times Magazine, and this was going back actually in the 70s. And it was from Tom Regan, who had said, imagine if humans were dominated by an alien race, which was superior to us in intelligence and communication or whatever else we consider to be the hallmark of human, quote, superiority. Would they not be as justified in experimenting on us and eating us as we feel we are entitled to do to non-humans who we might regard as inferiors? And I said to myself, absolutely. The reason we do it is not because it's right, it's just because we can get away with it. We have the power over this. It's just a might makes right situation. It's not an ethical basis, because the answer to his question was, if we're entitled to do this to non-humans, then they would be entitled to do that the same to us, the superior alien race. And of course, we wouldn't believe at that point that they should do this to us, that they're entitled. But the ethics would be the same.
You're so right. That is so interesting. And I am looking, I think that we have exhausted all of the questions that we have here tonight. Is there anyone in our audience that wants to ask that last burning question? We want all of your questions to be answered as we wrap up our session. Dr. Bandana, Maya, anything else you'd like to inquire about? And at this juncture, if you would like to inquire or just have a conversation with Dr. Kaufman, I'm going to invite you to turn on your video and come on screen with us. Any brave souls out there? Oh, come on. Okay.
Hi there. I like your video, Bandana. Very nice.
And Lisa has joined us. Lisa, you want to say something?
I don't know how to do it.
So just unclick, yeah.
I was telling Dr. Chola to turn on her mic. I thought maybe she had a question.
Okay, all right.
Okay, can you hear us now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa, for the reminder.
Yeah.
Dr. Kaufman, we really enjoyed your video.
Thank you.
We are really getting into mindfulness along with plant-based nutrition, so it was very appropriate for us.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's interesting because I was, you asked about videos that are out there that I might recommend, and so I sort of looked on the internet, and I really couldn't find very much that was talking along the same lines as what I was discussing. It might expand on certain things that I discussed. I was kind of surprised that there really isn't much out there along those lines. I mean, people have written some things, and I'm not saying that I was saying things that were revolutionary or profoundly original, but it was interesting that those kind of concepts really, I couldn't find them.
Right. There's definitely a need. The only thing that really comes to mind is a book called The Mindful Vegan. Are you aware of that?
No.
By Lanny Muehlrath.
Okay, good to know.
So that's a nice one. And of course, I always love The World Peace Diet by Will Tuttle.
Sure. And so there's some books out there that really do that quite nicely.
But not videos.
At least not shorter ones. I mean, I'm sure that there's some that are going to be really, really long, but you know, the sorts of things that are kind of digestible.
Yeah. So thank you for making one.
Right. You're welcome, and thank you.
Great. Anyone else? I saw that Eric and Megan, would you like to say something?
Good to see you.
Hi, Steve. Good to see you, as always.
Likewise. Hi, Eric.
Steve's an excellent speaker. I enjoy listening to him every time. I've known him for years.
Yep. We go back a long ways.
Nice to virtually meet you.
Oh, very much.
Heard so much about you.
I had the question about, you know, which fruits and vegetables were strongest in some of the antioxidants for eye health, but yeah, I mean, I think basically I know the answer. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of them out there that are really good for you. I mean, obviously your carrots have got a lot of the carotenoids, and tomatoes, and then, you know, but your squashes and broccoli and kale, all those things, they've got different things in them, and so it's just a matter of having a variety of stuff.
Right.
I mean, just
eat a rainbow.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's not like you have to have a little bit of each one every week, but just over time, just, you know, having variety, and you sort of go by the season and what's seasonal, and so that it's not expensive. Just
pumpkin.
Common sense.
Right. Time for pumpkins.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thank you both. And is there anyone else who's brave enough to come on screen with us? No? Peter, we see you lurking in the background there. Would you like to come in and say anything? Join us for a moment. And if not,
Thank you, Lynn.
you're welcome,
And Lisa.
Dr. Kaufman.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kaufman.
It's really been a pleasure, and this has been a space I know that Peter had mentioned that he wanted to see some conversation around, because as we're talking about whole food plant-based lifestyle from a medical perspective, we still want to get the lifestyle perspective in. And I think that you've done a very good job in having us to bring mindfulness and respect and compassion into the conversation, and animal protectionism. It's been talked about, but not to the degree that we did tonight. So thank you so much for your contribution.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, we're going to wrap it up for this evening. Would you like to say something else? Okay. All right.
No, just thank you and good night.
Thank you. All right, everyone, we will see you next week when I believe our topic is going to be around fasting, water fasting. So be sure to join us next week. Keep an eye out for your email on Saturday. Kind of go through it over the weekend and join us next Tuesday when we're in the conversation about fasting and water. Thanks again, everyone. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Good night.